Good evening, good day, good morning, depending on wherever you are in the world. Hello to everyone today. Now, I'm replacing Asaf today. My name is Mutlu, and we'll be going over the second course together, as usual, with Gilad. Hello to you too, Gilad.
Hi, how are you? I'll be taking your questions.
Good. Gilad, as usual, will take your questions, and today we'd like to open the second lesson with a bit of an apology. I do believe there was an email sent which was meant for advanced students, but it also went to the fundamental class takers about Rav's lesson. So a few guys did turn up for the lesson. However, it was not meant for you. We did try to get the word out, apparently, but just in case it didn't reach you, we do apologize for that. All right? And today is the second lesson, and the first lesson was what is Kabbalah and so forth. So today we're going to take a look at the purpose of creation. We're going to take a look at some Baal HaSulam articles and definitions to see how he approaches to the purpose of creation, how he describes that to us, how he teaches that to us. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to take the course a bit more shorter in order to leave more questions, question time. Because normally what we find in the second lesson is that we talk too much and you guys don't get to ask too much. So this lesson, we're going to cut the lesson a bit more short in terms of material, but we're going to leave much more time for questions. So do write your questions as we go along. And if there is something still not quite clear from the first lesson, we'll try to get those done at the end of the lesson as well. So if you can, when you're taking questions, if there's anything related to the first lesson, just keep them at the end. We'll go over them as well. All right? So let's get smashing. Now today the lesson's purpose of creation, and we're going to take a look at an article called The Peace by Baal HaSulam, which is in the book Kabbalah for the Student. I'm sure you guys all got the screen book, all right? And it's on page 262. But before we go into that, what I'm going to do today is take the lecture from back to front instead of front to back. And we'll get back to clarifications later. Now, if we take a look at our life, from a wider perspective, from the whole of humanity's development and so forth, we can take a look at it like this. Let's make it a little bit of a drawing. If we had a guy sitting on the mountaintop, okay, let's say there's a guy sitting on the mountaintop, and he was looking at our world, let's say through a large telescope, and he could see from the still, the vegetative, and the animate levels a certain phase of development. Okay, what development do we see? For example, the most obvious one for us is the vegetative level. The reason for that is we use the lower levels to sustain ourselves in life. Okay, we're just talking about corporeality right now, how I sustain my life in this world. Let's leave the purpose of creation just on the side for a moment and just take a look at our life. What's going on with our life without any purpose to it? If we never thought about the purpose of our life and was just living just like in the animate level, what would we see? Okay, as an intelligent being, as an intelligent created creature, what would we see if we looked at the world and we observed it? And we could see that there is the still level, the vegetative level, and the animate level. And somehow, in my life, I'm using those levels. I'm using them actually for food, for sustenance, for the things I need in life, for food, shelter, I don't know, what else have we got? We've got family. It's just basic sustenance needs. But if we look at all these levels individually, it's quite in-depth. And if we take anything from its initial development, let's take, for example, Baal HaSulam gives a nice example. He says, let's take an apple, for example. Now, when an apple is developing on a tree, it's really raw. It doesn't taste too good. And in fact, if we eat vegetables and fruits that are really raw, it's very poisonous for the body. But Baal HaSulam says, look, if we take a look at any fruit or vegetable that we're using to eat and to sustain ourselves, it has a seed. We plant that into the soil. We give it water, get sunshine, minerals, and it goes through some kind of a pattern of development. And when it goes through that development, let's do it like this, it goes through certain levels of development until it becomes a nice, green apple. All right, can you see that? Or is that, can you see the drawing? No? Can you see the drawing? Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. So if a person looks at the world, he looks at a certain stage in life, a development stage. He sees that something grows from a small seed and becomes something mature, and what we do afterwards with our life is we just eat it. Or we use it for something else, like I said here, for food, shelter, family, or to make us more comfortable. All right? To make ourselves a bit more comfortable and to survive. Oops. Now we have a problem though. Because if we take it all these things in life, from an apple to a watermelon, or from even a small calf that gets born, grows up into a cow, we use its milk, we use its skin, we use its meat for still sustenance and comfort in our daily living in life. We can see all these phases of development, that in nature, still vegetative, animate forms seem to complement each other. Okay? The vegetative feed the animate level. The animate level also gives man some kind of sustenance. And the still vegetative and the animate, when they're all interconnected, they seem to have this, I don't know, this role that they carry on life. It just goes on. They keep each other in a certain balance, and life flows. Okay? But our problem is when we start to look at ourselves. So, the first person to really ask about life and what's going on with us and what the purpose of life was a guy called Adam. So this is actually what I wanted to draw here. That's Adam here. And he was sitting, according to the books, under a tree and thinking, what is all this for? Why are we living? What's the point of life? Obviously, before Adam, there were also people walking on their two legs. Okay? Adam is just the first guy who said, why are we living? He was the first guy really interested in the purpose of life. And that's why we call him first man in Kabbalah. So humanity from that point onwards has been having a bit of a dilemma about why we're living, why all these levels below us, because seemingly we're much more intelligent, have a level of development, they develop, but we don't understand why we're living. We have a big problem. So from Adam onwards, humanity's development, historically, hope you can see that, has been very, very chaotic. Okay? And the reason and because of that chaos, humanity had to somehow justify its existence. Okay? The reason for that is we have a concept of time, which animals don't have. Animals always live the present. But humanity, they look at the past, they look at their current situation, and they can pretty much have a vision of the future. So going through all these historical developments, Baal Islam says humanity came up with a bunch of conclusions about why they're living, about the purpose of life. And we're now going to go over those 4 definitions. According to Baal Islam, we do like to stay close to the text. And then what I'll do, I'll give a Kabbalistic explanation as to our purpose, okay, as how Kabbalah explains humanity's purpose. So up to here, I hope all is well, okay? And if there isn't, you can still ask questions. If I do go a little bit fast, I do apologize because we do want to leave a lot of room for questions today. Okay? So that's the general outlook. So let's take a look at what Baal Islam says about what humanity has developed for itself. And we have got a few definitions here. We wrote them. Now, on page 263 in the first, in the Peace article, on page 263, the first paragraph, the first method is called nature. And we're going to go over that definition. All right? So this is once again Baal Islam. So Baal Islam says that humanity all of humanity's definitions, their outlook on the purpose of creation, can be categorized in 4 groups. Bible Islam puts them all 4. In the world, there's 3,500 religions. I mean, actually, it's been counted, actually. Okay, religions, philosophies, way of looking at life, and so forth. So Bible Islam says these all come under 4 categories, and by the way, these have nothing to do with Kabbalah. Okay? And then we'll take a look at Kabbalah. So the first definition is nature. Okay? And according to this method, humanity says, although the Creator watches over the existence of reality with wondrous wisdom, yet He Himself is mindless and does all that senselessly. If there had been any reason and feeling in Him, He would certainly not leave such malfunctions in the provisions of reality without pity and compassion for the tormented. For this reason, they named Him nature, meaning a mindless, heartless supervisor. And for that reason, they believe that there is no one to be angry at, to pray to, or to justify oneself to. Now, that's a pretty good definition for humanity that's gone through quite a lot of torment and have nowhere to turn to, which is pretty much like our situation, actually. If you think about it, we've gone through so much historical development with so much wars, horrific ecological disasters, which we're still going through, and we have absolutely no way to justify it. Why would anybody, create us in order to put us through such torment? And if we look at our lives, really, the disappointments are far greater than the happinesses we get. So humanity is just constantly going through some kind of a coffee grinder, in order to just come to these conclusions, to find some kind of justification for himself. And the first methodology that humanity came up with this is nature. Basically, this is how life is, and there's nothing we can do about it, so make the best of it. All right? That's our 21st century approach to life. Let's make the best of it, there's nothing we can do about it, and so on. That's the first category. Now, the second category that humanity developed through its development, is something called 2 authorities. Okay, hope you can read that. Yeah. 2 authorities. There are 2 supervisors here. One creates and sustains the good, and the other creates and sustains the bad. Now, into this category, religions go into this. I know, all kinds of yin, yang. What else is there in Middle East? Positive energy, negative energy. All these things that humanity came up for itself. The devil and God, or the good angel and the bad angel. And things like that. Everything goes into that category in terms of religion and humanity's look on good things and bad things in life. And we also think of it and refer to it like that as well. If we take a look at our lives, we say, oh man, that person is really evil and that person is a good person. We're also, even though not consciously segregating a person to a devil or an angel or Satan and God or whatever, although we're not consciously categorizing things like that, we say this is good, this is bad. And this is actually where it comes from. In us, through all our humanity's development, these things are actually embedded in us. We can't get rid of them somehow. Okay? And Bible Islam says, look, this is a part of development, this is what we've all gone through, and it's like a constant thing in us. Good, bad. There are 2 things that contradict each other, that fight with each other, one for the good, one for the bad. All right, and like I said, all religions and things like that come into this category.
Hollywood too, the good guys, the bad guys.
Absolutely, same in Hollywood. Yeah. The good guy and the bad guy, good cop, bad cop, everything goes into there. And then humanity developed another outlook on life, and they called it multiple gods, because they saw that there's a lot of forces in nature, and those forces seem to impact our lives. So they said, well, wait a minute, maybe there's more than just good and bad. Maybe there's just a bunch of forces. And you know all this from Greek philosophy, mythology, all the Roman gods, all the Celtic gods, and things like that throughout all of humanity in all parts of the world, there was a lot of beliefs in that. Humanity went through that stage as well. And Baha'u'llah Islam puts this like this: multiple gods. They have divided and separated each of the general actions for itself, meaning strength, wealth, domination, beauty, famine, death, disorder, and so on. They appointed each its supervisor and expanded the system as they wished. So humanity, having no choice, basically, had to come up with another method. Say, well, he's the god of fire, he's the god of the ocean, I don't know, there's Zeus on the mountaintop, the god of gods, and so on. Humanity is still looking for some kind of justification as to why something good or why something bad is happening to it. Okay? And that was the third. And the fourth, the last, something called left his operation. Baha'u'llah Salam just puts this as left his operation. And he says, the supervisor of reality is indeed wise and caring. Yet, because of his exaltedness, which is beyond conception, our world is deemed a grain of sand, nothing in his eyes. It is not worthwhile for him to bother with our petty businesses, and this is why our livelihood is so disordered, and every man does that which is right in his own eyes. Right. And a lot of people seem to believe in that as well. We have a lot of atheist people. They don't believe in God. They just say, this is life. This is how it is. I do what I can. And from that to religious, to multiple gods, to left his operation. Those are the four things Baha'u'llah Islam categorizes humanity as, in terms of how to justify their lives. Okay. So the question for us, and I'm sure for all of you, is there a God? I mean, that's the question. That's a question for us all. And Kabbalists do explain that, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. Until we get there, it's been a bit of a fast run. Okay, so in like 10, 15 minutes, we try to wrap up everything that humanity went through and its conclusions. So is there any questions within that 10, 15 minutes?
Yep, there is a question.
We'll do that before what the Kabbalists said.
Yep.
Okay.
Jason from Canada. And it's backed up by Jason from Canada.
Okay, Jason from Canada is asking what?
So, if the universe is complete giving and knowledge, why is it that most of us feel our glasses are half empty? Also, what role does meditation play? I've been trying to meditate only to discover its extreme difficulty. Anything to help?
Absolutely. First of all, we haven't come to the perception of reality yet, Jason, and when you get to that lesson, I think you'll find it very interesting. First thing about the universe is, the universe has a balance, okay? That's why actually I wanted to touch on this still vegetative and animate level, because if we look at nature as just a person, an objective person, in fact, we can say scientist instead of Adam, okay? If a scientist just looks at the world, he understands that there's some kind of balance here within these levels. And what we're discovering at the moment in the 21st century is that, well, this is all great. This is all very well balanced. Animals, when they even eat other animals up, they only do it when they're hungry. You can have a wolf and a lamb sitting next to each other. The wolf won't touch it unless he's hungry. A lion will not hunt a zebra, even if the zebra is right in front of him, unless he's really hungry. There is this balance in nature, and when we look at ourselves, we seem to be completely off the track. We seem to be completely off balance. And nature is actually trying to give us a contradiction here. Contradictions in providence is actually another topic, another title for this topic. Why are there so many contradictions? Well, it's because we are the contradicting thing within nature that needs to sort itself out. In other words, we need to grow up. We need to get wiser. Now, and if we observe nature, this is the part that is imbalanced, human. Okay, We consider ourselves very intelligent. However, if you look at our development, if you look at life, we're actually the dumbest creation ever. And from that dumbest creation has to come out something extremely perfect, like two extreme opposites. And that's what we're going to explain today in the purpose of creation. In terms of meditation, I don't quite know what you mean by meditation, because meditation comes to English from the French word méditation. In the Oxford Dictionary, you'll find that it means to be in deep thought. It's not really crossing your legs and doing hums and stuff. That won't really get you anywhere. It'll actually reduce your thinking. It will reduce your perception, really. Okay, so meditation is something we don't really do. To be in deep thought, however, according to the Oxford Dictionary's definition, if you're talking about that kind of meditation, there is room for that in Kabbalah very much. Deep thought is actually a very interesting tool we do use in order to clarify matters. So if that's the meditation you're talking about, to be in deep thought, yes, we will look into that in the future. It's something we do to be in deep thought, to analyze everything. It's called inner outlook, or inner analysis, inner work. And that will be coming up on the future lessons as well. It's a nice topic you've touched on. If there is nothing else, I would like to go on to the purpose of creation. Gilad?
Yeah, I think Elsa Balsalam answers just that question on page 262.
Yeah? Where is it? Do you know?
We'll find it in a second. Meanwhile, maybe...
You take a look at it while we go on to the purpose of creation.
All right.
Okay. Now, Kabbalists... and by the way, all these methods, the four methods that we talked about here, they're all inside us, seriously. Although we may consider ourselves as religious, we may consider ourselves as atheists, we may consider ourselves as naturalists, all these things are really inside of us. Even if I have a bad day at work and am really ticked off with my boss, it's like I've assigned him as a god doing me something evil. Okay? Although we're not conscious and aware of these things, we have a bad weather, for example, and we blame the weather for it. It's like there's a god for weather, and I'm blaming him. Okay? So all these things in us, even though we say, I'm religious and this and that, we tend to have our ways of going into other directions. Why? Because in humanity, we've come through so many life cycles, which we're going to look into in a moment, that these are all really embedded in us. And it's all part of our development, which is very good. Because through all this development, we can start to ask some really fundamental questions. Now, Kabbalists are saying this. Okay, by the way, like I said, these four methods have nothing to do with Kabbalah. This is humanity's approach. Okay? And the Kabbalists are saying something else. Okay? And now we're going to move to that something else. Now, they're saying there is a creator. Okay? There is a creator. Okay, I'm going to draw it a bit on the right-hand side here. There's a creator who created a created being. Okay? Sometimes we draw this as a sometimes we draw it like this. All right? The creator created a desire to receive. Okay? Sometimes we draw it like this, but for the purpose of this exercise, I'm just going to draw it round. Okay? Kabbalists say the Creator created just one thing, actually, a desire to receive. And the Kabbalists say, look, there is a Creator. It's obvious that this is all created somehow. Question is what for? And question is, why would he have the need to? Why would anyone want to create humanity and push it through all this suffering? So the Kabbalists are saying, look, there is a Creator. His nature is full-on bestowal. Nothing else. He likes to give 100% good stuff. Okay? But we don't feel it as such, so we're questioning our lives. And they say that in order for him to give everything, he had to create something which was completely opposite to him. Because if I'm 100% bestowing, I don't need anything. It means I have everything. And if I want to give everything that I have to someone, it means that they have to be completely lacking everything that I have. So he created something that lacks pretty much everything. And that's us. Okay? And He created that as a desire to receive. Now, we don't see ourselves as a desire to receive. We feel like a body. I got my body, and that's how I feel life. But if we look at our nature every day, we want something. Our whole life is looking for fulfillment. We constantly want something, whether it's corporeal or whether it's something spiritual. We just want something all the time. And if we didn't, then we'd be depressed. Okay? Because the purpose of creation, according to Kabbalists, is for this created creature to have all the fulfillment that he can possibly get. Alright? So for that reason, there is a creator, they say, which created a desire to receive, and that's us here. And he created it in a way that he would get endless pleasure. Alright? Endless pleasure. So something very, very good. Now, in order for us to get all this pleasure, let me actually colour that. And today we're lucky we've got coloured pens. Normally I don't get these in my lesson. So he wants to give us all the pleasure that he possibly can. And this is what he actually did. The Kabbalists are saying, when he created the desire to receive, he filled it with utmost pleasure, and that's it. There's nothing else in between. So you're thinking, why are we going through so much torment and not feeling any pleasure or feeling lack of pleasure? Well, the Kabbalists are saying, although we're created in perfection and we are perfect, we are still yet to understand that. In order to understand that, we have to build a mind. A mind, or in other words, a soul with full understanding and sensation. So we have to get wiser. Okay? And the Kabbalists are saying, look guys, for this you need an instrument called a soul, which also has its feeling and its understanding. Just like in our body we have feelings and understanding, they're saying you need to create a soul with properties close to the Creator, matching exactly to Him, in order to get what He wants to give you. So you can feel that state. So that's not a bit clear, is it? It's not. So let me draw that up a little bit. Maybe it'll get clear along the way. So He created us in perfection and then did something horrific. He took all that sensation away gradually and brought us into the level of this world. In the form of a body. Now, a body is animate. Okay? So we call it the animate level. Right? However, what He did was He brought us from a spiritual existence into a corporeal one. Okay? And all the spiritual worlds they talk about are in these phases here. They call these the 5 worlds. Put it here. The 5 worlds. Sometimes you'll hear about 125 steps or degrees of spirituality. All this is the difference between corporeality and spirituality. All the spiritual worlds they talk about in all these things called the holy books, all these things that the Baal Haslam describes to us in Talmud Asar Sefirot, the 6 volumes, everything that's written in the book of Zohar, all these Kabbalistic books are actually talking about things that are above our level. They're describing spiritual advancement, spiritual sensations and understandings that we lack here, which is the reason for our confusion and our worldly dilemmas. So, after the Creator put us on this world, what have we been going through? Well, let's take a look at what we've been going through. Humanity has been going through life cycles, also known as reincarnations. Okay? We've gone through thousands of years of reincarnations. Reincarnations. All right? So we've been going through thousands of years of reincarnations only to come to a state where we need to ask ourselves truly, what the heck are we doing here? All right, what is the purpose of our life? And this is a level which the Kabbalists say, well, a time period actually, is the 21st century. Okay, 21st century, let's write it like that. So the Kabbalists are saying, until the 21st century, humanity had to go through all these torments, all these developments, the phases of, money, power, science, all these developments that we went through, in order to come to this question that, well, no matter what we do, we're really not going to be fulfilled. Okay? And because of that, they're saying it's a time where now humanity needs to jump a level. We need to come to a higher degree of existence because we've done everything. We went through everything. We tried to build a comfortable life, and we have, let's face it. We went up onto the moon, we went up into the stars, we developed all kinds of riches, all kinds of luxuries to make us happy, comfortable in life. But there still is room, a huge room, for the question, well, first of all, we don't get any pleasure, which is ongoing. We constantly have to get something new in order to get a little bit of pleasure, which afterwards evaporates. And the second biggest question is, well, wait a minute. I come to a certain age and I end up dead. So what's going on? I mean, what is there a purpose to this? Or I'm just going to live like a cow on a field who eats its grass and is happy and then dies? Or am I just like that? Is that how it is? Is that what it's meant for? So obviously the Kabbalists are saying, no, it's not really meant for that. It's meant for a higher level. So after all this development we see in the world also right now, if you look at this, a lot of people are questioning their lives. They're saying, that's why all these spiritual methods all of a sudden popped up. All of a sudden, since 1995 onwards, you see a lot of spirituality in the world. People are going to all over the world. They're going to India, they're going to East, they're going to, all kinds of religions to seek an answer. And there's a huge explosion of spiritual methods all of a sudden because people want to know why they're living. So the Kabbalists say it's great if you ask a question about the purpose of life because you probably got something called a dot in the heart. Now, a dot in the heart is the foundation for spirituality. A dot in the heart is that pressure point, is that prick of a needle inside that constantly bugs me and tells me, Mutlu, what are you living for? Okay? And if this thing really bugs me and disturbs me, because I'm a desire to receive fulfillment, I'll start looking. I'll start looking for an answer to this dilemma. And the answer, the Kabbalists say, will bring you to three things. A teacher. Okay, I'm going to write it here. I hope you'll see it. A teacher. It will bring you to authentic books. And it will bring you to friends. A group of friends, okay, who share the same aspiration. And from there on, this is called, you can call that Kabbalah. And from there, if you take on this method of teaching, okay, you can ascend to the purpose of life, which is to become exactly perfect, just like the Creator. Now, call it Creator, call it nature, call it God, call it Allah, call it whatever you want. Okay? The name here isn't the point. The point is the level where we're supposed to get to. And that is a higher level where we feel absolute perfection, which means we understand everything, we feel everything that's happening to us, and we have a cause and consequence relation to it. We understand the whole of reality, the whole of purpose of creation, and we lack nothing. Okay? And all that, they're saying, Kabbalah is saying, it's called a spiritual ascent. And they're saying it's something we have to do while living in this world. Alright? So, all we have to do is very simple. We just have to get back up into infinity. That's all we have to do. Okay? And it's not hard at all.
Just a question about that. From Simon from Brazil.
Sure.
How to know what step out of the 125 I am today?
Ah, that's a good question. Today you're on none of these actually. Okay, because to be in spirituality means to see God. Okay? Now there's a lot of definitions about Kabbalah out there, and I'm sure this is what you guys did in the first lesson, so it's probably covered. But when we're talking about Kabbalah, we need to give it a really good definition. Okay? Attainments of spirituality, according to Kabbalah, means I see and I understand the cause and consequence of everything in creation. It means I actually see. It's also described in the old books as I saw God, or I seeing God. Alright? This is actually what spirituality means in Kabbalah. Like I said before, there's 3,500 methods on spirituality, but a Kabbalistic definition of spirituality is I see my Maker and I understand His thoughts. I understand Him thoroughly. He's like transparent. Everything He knows, He understands. I know, I understand. So until we get there, I'm afraid, until we get to that first level of seeing the Creator, seeing the attribute of bestowal evolve in front of us, which is something against our nature, all right? There's nothing to talk about except to study the method, all right? So we're currently here, right, in this world here. What we need to do is, as soon as possible, hopefully, is to come to the first step of spirituality, which is above that line. And this line is called the Mahsom. Okay, Mahsom means barrier. It's the barrier, actually, that stops me from feeling, from sensing the spiritual world, so that I only live in my body in this world, which is a bit of a problem, okay? Because my five senses will end up dead when I end up dead, and there's nothing left with it. So the Kabbalists are saying, guys, when you're living here in this world, in this realm, in our five senses, you got to make sure you got to attain this first level at least, which is called a soul. Now, the soul has degrees all the way up here, known as 125 steps of spirituality. Okay, this is Kabbalistic definition. So, when you're asking a question, don't bring into it other methods which describe spirituality as something else. Okay? In Kabbalah, spirituality is very straightforward. I understand the cause and consequence of everything in creation, including the thought of the Creator, what He was thinking, okay, when He created us. Sometimes we ask that question a lot. What the heck was He thinking? Well, you want to know? That's the steps. Those are the steps we have to go through to come to full understanding and comprehension. So we will understand what He was thinking. Until we understand, the Kabbalists give us the books. So they're saying this. Well, if you want to understand the Creator, you have to get His attributes. Also in our life, we can only hear, see things that are equivalent in form to our sensory organs. For example, there are radio waves I can't sense. But if I have a radio tuner, I can get the sound which brings out music or somebody talking. Okay? So the Kabbalists are saying, just like in nature, there are things that my five senses don't grasp. They can't cling on to. I also can't cling on to the Creator, which is fulfilling the whole of creation. They're saying the Creator is everywhere. Okay? Everywhere. He is filling the whole of reality. Alright? If you look at this piece of paper as the whole of reality, they're saying the Creator is everywhere. So I've got a bit of a problem. Well, if He is everywhere, why doesn't He show up? What's His problem? Well, the problem is we don't have the sensory organ to feel Him. Just like we don't feel radiation here as well. We just don't feel it. We can't sense it. So we have to develop a device in order to sense whether there's radiation in an area or not. If we want to sense the Creator, now get this, we have to develop a device called a soul. All right? And that's what's going to detect the Creator. It's not going to just detect His presence. It's going to give us an understanding. All right? It's going to give us an understanding of what He's thinking, what the intention behind His action is, what He wants to direct us to. If I know the cause of something that happens, I will not suffer. All of humanity's suffering comes because I don't understand why it happens to me. So the whole of humanity is asking, why is that happening to me? Why me? Well, why not? Okay? So we have to understand all the cause and consequences of His relation to us in order to discover the whole of reality, and then we won't feel any pain. And also, if I know the cause and consequence of everything, I can balance myself out, just like the still, vegetative and animate level are doing. They're always balancing themselves out. So what's the difference between me and an animal then? Well, an animal doesn't know the cause and consequence. He's instinctively in that situation. But a human becomes to the level of the Creator. This is the difference between these two levels here. Remember I said we were created in perfection. So you're going to ask, well, what's the difference between that and that? Well, that's very easy, because there I know everything. Absolute knowledge. Absolute knowledge in a soul. Alright? Absolute knowledge. And also plus ability to do everything. Because knowing is just isn't enough. I mean, what good is it if I know everything but can't do anything? So in the level of spiritual development, you actually have an opportunity to take participation in everything that happens. So you can actually do what the Creator is doing. We have actually double the benefit than the Creator. Because the Creator is only bestowal. We are created as a desire to receive. But when we receive the attribute of bestowal, we're twice as He is. So we're actually higher than Him. It's actually an interesting topic. But we won't get into that now because we'll never have anything else to discuss. Now, this is everything in a nutshell. Okay? The whole of this is the 5 Book of Moses. The whole of this is the 24 volumes of Zohar. The whole of this is the 6 volumes of Tas, the study of the 10 Sephirot. But this is all in a nutshell about the purpose of creation. So we can just, get some clarity, and hopefully we'll clarify further in the next half hour when we get some questions, because questions will actually help us to get deeper into this. But this is in a nutshell. I hope I've done a good job on the nutshell. Let's see what the questions are, Gilad.
Many questions. So you've done a good job. And take the first one, Connie from Alabama. So what happens to us if we do not develop the soul?
If we don't develop the soul, it's a pity. First of all, it's a pity that we don't. If we don't develop our soul, and look, let's face it, some people don't have a need for it either. That's why we definitely don't go out there and wave the Kabbalah flag and tell people about it. You can only explain to someone if they have actually a question about life. And you can say, well, look, Kabbalists say this. That's how it is. If you want to study, you can study or not. So if we don't develop a soul, we have to come back in order to continue that development. Because like I said, there is a purpose to creation. And the Creator wants to bring all of us into absolute perfection, into oneness. So some people are obviously still not questioning their lives. Why? Because they have to go through this development like everybody else. Like we send our children to kindergarten, then to school, high school, college, and so forth. Why? Because they have to develop in life to make a living, to live, right? To have a good life. So the Creator brought us to a certain development, which here also the point in the heart here is an important factor. Okay, if I just highlight this a little bit here. Okay? The point in the heart. This thing really has to bug a person for him to study Kabbalah. You know, it's not just like, oh, what's the meaning of my life? That point in the heart really grabs a person by his collars and is really shaking him up. He's really, really wondering why he's living. Okay? And until that really comes to a person, there's no real necessity for a person to search for it. If we don't, we have to come back, go through development.
Questions still flowing in.
Correct.
So, Marilyn from Trinidad. How can we be higher than God? Are you crazy?
Absolutely, that's what I think as well. Are we crazy? But think about it for a second. It's also embedded in our nature. When we have children, don't we want them to be higher than us? Instinctively, we want our children to be better. We want them to take us to that higher level of development. We want to give them a better education. Excuse me. We want to give them a better life. We want to make them better than us. There's actually a lot of pride involved in that. When we make our children, something great. You look at your son and you say, yeah, that's my boy. It's embedded in our nature. Everything about the purpose of creation. And there's no greater pleasure than that, mind you. When you raised your child and they've turned out to be something great, the whole world looks up to them and you say, yep, that's my boy. And that's embedded in nature. So I'm not crazy at all, but there is also in us that tendency. And why does that tendency come to us? Because it's in our roots. We're created. It's a deep topic. We're created from the Creator. That dot in the heart I'm talking about is a part that actually belongs to the Creator. And from that little spark that belongs to Him, we're going to become into something perfect. Okay? So the question is right. But on the other hand, if we look at ourselves, we want the same thing for our children. So why shouldn't the Creator want something higher for His creation? Okay? So we're not crazy. It's very logical. In Kabbalah, everything is logical except one thing, and that is to describe the light of the Creator. Okay? Because that's like all airy-fairy and mystic. However, if you stick around with the study, you'll begin to feel it, and it won't be mystical. It'll be very concrete. You'll begin to develop that relationship. Call it the light, call it the Creator, it doesn't matter. But it comes with development. Right? So you'll be glad to know that you're not with crazy people. Next question there, Glad.
Jason from Canada. How did the Kabbalists come across this information?
Jason, that's a very good question. It's not by coincidence that I first put here a guy called Adam. All right? Here, Adam. All right? Now, Adam, everybody knows Adam, so I specifically put Adam there because he was actually the first guy observing the planet, observing life, and he wondered why he was created. Our humanity's development is always from pure to very coarse. That's why our suffering is also very qualitative as we develop forward. So when the first person called Adam, when I'm talking about a person, I'm not talking about the first meat and bone. A person is someone who discovers the Creator, a human. Okay, I'm talking about a human. When he first discovered the Creator, it was just from this pure desire that wanted to know the purpose of life, the purpose of creation. And that's how he revealed the power behind creation. Now remember, I said we're a desire to receive. The Creator wanted to fulfill a creature. So if we want something really, really badly, okay, He's compelled to fulfill that. And that's what Adam's desire was. And it was a very pure desire. Okay, it was a very pure desire that just wanted to know why we're created. And that's how he began to discover that there's a force behind nature, behind everything that goes on. And that's in fact why he's got a book of, it's not a spiritual book, but he's got some writings called The Angel Azrael, which describes what he felt and what he went through. After Adam, there was always Kabbalists who conveyed it to people of that generation. I'm sure did you do the history of Kabbalah in the first lesson?
Roughly.
Roughly?
Yeah.
So after Adam, there was a lot of Kabbalists who discovered they had the sense. In fact, we were very sensitive to nature in the past as well. But because our development has always been coarse and coarse and coarse, we left that sensation of nature. That's why we think we're above nature. Before, when what we call primitive in the past is actually a far greater developed human, because we had a sensation of nature. We understood that we were a part of it and we needed to balance with it. But as we developed, we thought, well, wait a minute, I'm smarter and I think I'm above nature. And that's when the whole thing just fell apart. From that onwards, humanity is going into worse and worse suffering all the time. So that's how it first came, and the teaching has been conveyed every generation, because every generation there's actually somebody who's asking about the purpose of life. Now the Creator, on the one hand, has a purpose, but he's not silly, okay? He's not crazy, as the question says. He's not crazy, because he wants to develop us to that level. So what has he got to do? On the one hand, he's got to give us the questions about life. On the other hand, he's giving us, guys, if there's someone really searching, he's going to find me, and here's the teaching for it. Okay? So you can't just beat up your I don't know, you can't just beat somebody up and say, well, I didn't have a reason for that. Okay? If somebody's going to go through some kind of a suffering, torment to come to a question, there's got to be a solution on the side. So the Creator very smartly created a system on the side of human development. So on the one hand, we're developing corporeally, and on the other hand, though, for those who seek really the purpose of life, there's always sources, a teacher to teach what really it's all about.
So just, excuse me, just to continue that,
Yeah.
Angelina from Montreal, Canada, how do we develop our soul? And Paul from Dallas goes on and asks, the soul we are to develop, does it already exist or in a dormant state? And Elisheva from Indonesia rewrites her question from before, how do we get to the first level of the 125 steps? Just by being able to tune into the light's frequency.
Okay, these are very related questions. So how do we develop a soul? Well, first of all, we have to sit and learn how to develop a soul. Okay? And that's the study of Kabbalah. So we have to first of all start studying, and that's what you've done. You all came here, you're studying Kabbalah, and you're trying to understand what it really is. So for that, we've got the introduction course, then we've got the fundamental course. Basically, what Kabbalah is going to teach us is how to balance ourselves to nature. And if we balance ourselves to nature, that development of the soul, that sensation, feeling, will start to come automatically. Okay, it's going to become something like a flip. It's like a psychological change. But that change becomes by a person's desire to change and by a person's initiative to put himself into the balance that was created in nature. Now, the Creator didn't create nature for a laugh. He put the state in front of us, and He's showing us that everything in nature is a sign for us to get back into balance, consciously. Okay? So, how do we develop a soul? How are we going to get to the first degree of the 125 steps? And what was the other soul, the development? Or is the soul present? All that is a process, just like a development process of studying Kabbalah. Okay, so we need to study, we need to read the authentic sources, we need to be with friends so we can practice what we're learning, just like in a classroom, so we can practice everything practically, because Kabbalah is actually a very practical science that a person applies to himself or herself. So we want to apply all the knowledge in a group in order to discover our inner qualities and match those inner qualities to something that's bestowal. And to help us to do that is on standby called the light, which is the creator, which I just said a minute ago is the most hard thing to explain to a first comer. Okay? As we study, the light of the creator will help us to change. It will help us to understand. It will help us to feel and clarify everything. This is also why I touched on the word meditation a little bit and said it's deep thought. As we study, we will learn how to be in thought about clarifying cause and consequence to us, which will bring us to a much balanced state. Okay, I hope my words are coming out really simple and understandable. All right? So we're going to develop all that through the study. Does a soul exist? Yes, it does, because it was created here in the first state. This is the first state. Okay? And yeah, the Creator did create it here in perfection. We just don't feel it. We're in the second state here in our corporeal development. And from here we have to get to this third state of perfection with full consciousness, with full development. Anything else there, Gilad?
Yep. On a different topic,
Yeah.
William from Toledo, Ohio, and Bernadette from Florida have similar questions. So William asks, how does Kabbalah define reincarnation? Does each soul reincarnate, or is it just a way of describing a cycle of life in human society? And
That's a nice question, yeah.
And
Let's first deal with William.
Okay.
Actually, reincarnation in Kabbalah is a perception of reality topic. We define reincarnation in our current perception of reality as bodies dying and then coming back to continue that development. Okay? That's the corporeal physical definition. And Baal Islam says the whole of humanity is like a row of soldiers. They die, come back. They die, they come back. But when we die and come back, our previous development is embedded in us, and it's called the subconscious. That's why we have, sometimes instinctively we understand something, although we haven't experienced it in this current life cycle, we can relate to something as good and bad instinctively. Because all our past life experiences are embedded in something called the subconscious. And the subconscious pops up and it actually defines a lot of the things that we do in life to keep bad things away from us. Why? Because we've got previous experience from all these reincarnations. So in our 5 bodily senses, reincarnation is being rebodied again. But Kabbalah is talking about spirituality. When we actually mention the word Kabbalah, we're not even really talking about this world. Kabbalistic topics talk about this world actually just as far as I've explained it here. We were created in spirituality. We sense this world in our 5 senses. We're going through development in order to get back to perfection. Now let's talk about the spiritual worlds. All the Kabbalistic texts talk about the corporeal world just minutely, just to make us understand that we need to start discovering above. So they're all talking about the upper worlds. And in spirituality, a reincarnation is called as a renewal. A renewal for a person can be in a second. There is no time, space, and motion. So in spirituality, renewal means that I've come to a new phase. I've completed one level of development and I've gone up to another level of development. And this could be very, very fast. It could be in seconds. It could be in minutes. Okay? So reincarnation, corporeally and spirituality are a little bit different, but it's actually, what's behind it is the same thing. It's a change of form. A new developed form is called a reincarnation. Now, what's Bernadette asking?
Why do we remember from one incarnation to the next? Where we learn
Why
in
don't we
terms
remember?
of spiritual development.
That's also actually a nice question, because it also answers this question. Well, why do we die? Why can't we just go through development without dying, and the dot in the heart can just awaken, and then we can start to study spirituality and end up in infinity and hoo-la-la? Okay? That also asks the question, so why do we die? We don't remember, and we also go through this thing called death. It seemingly deletes all the suffering. If we didn't die, or if we remembered every torment that we went through in life, our current life would be intolerable. We'd never bear it. Okay? Just imagine all those historical movies that were made, right? About wars, about famine, everything that humanity went through, all the suffering. Imagine us going through all that and remembering actually what we felt and what we thought at the time. I mean, imagine, for example, in Italy there was that disaster in the Roman times where a volcano blew up. I think it was Pompeii. And everyone was left under ashes. Imagine if we were there and we actually remembered that. We'd never free ourselves from the things we went through, just like we can't free ourselves from certain thoughts that we went through a few days ago. Like, we keep remembering things that happened to us in our childhood because we can't seem to free ourselves from it. It's a part of development. That's also why we die. It seemingly deletes everything. It doesn't. It builds a subconscious, but deletes the suffering part so that this cycle becomes something tolerable, and I can add some kind of a development with this life cycle to my current development. That's why.
On another topic.
Well, the reason it's very deep. It's not just It's unfair to leave it at this short answer. On the other hand, we don't have infinite time. If you think about it, we're attaining two complete opposite things. The Creator is absolute good and perfection and bestowal. He created us in absolute lacking. It means absolute also evil, if you think about it, because we're completely opposite to Him. That's why in reality, if I want to understand something, anything, I must have two opposite forms. I need to have sweet and sour or bitter. I need to have night and day. I need to have beautiful, ugly. I need to have good, bad. If I don't have two impressions, I'll never have an impression. So He had to create something really, really opposite to Him. And that's why we have to forget about all the suffering in the past. It would be intolerable without understanding that cause and consequence factor. It's a very deep question.
Moving on.
Yes, please.
We've got time for another topic.
Yes, we do have about 12 minutes.
Okay, so Stephanie from Brazil. Does organized religion in general, does it help or has it become a detriment towards the path of enlightenment?
It's a good question. Now, religion was devised by many Kabbalists. They actually put religion together to bring some kind of societal conformity, let's call it. And they did that because on the one hand, you're giving society a notion that there is something higher than you. So there is a purpose. It's a question mark, though. That there is something, that we're not just here to die. They leave that question mark. They organize society to a level where a person then needs to wake up. Religion was really devised up until the 21st century. Religion will not help you get any spiritual development because it's based on a corporeal reflection of spiritual concepts, such as giving, charity, for example. We give charity, okay? Such as don't kill other people, don't steal, don't do this, don't do that. These are actually things that are related to spiritual concepts. Religious doings that we do physically are actually devised in such a way that they're supposed to counterpart our relationship with the Creator. However, I don't have a relationship with the Creator yet, because I can't feel that soul yet. I haven't developed it. So the Kabbalists thought, wait a minute, we can't just let these people live like animals, okay, because they're going to end up, like a cow. So what they did is, let's do something that will give them a conceptual preparation that there is something higher, okay, and that they will need to discover something higher sooner or later. Which brings us back to the topic of the dot in the heart, which I drew here earlier. If this dot in the heart awakens, a person's already over religion. Kabbalists are saying from 1995 onwards, let's say the beginning of the 21st century, religion will not be able to leash human egoism. They also developed a system to make sure that our egoism was restricted in a way that we could get along in society with less suffering. Their whole idea was to give us less suffering. But they also understood that this was only going to be until a time period, because there's going to be a development in human history where people are just going to go nuts. And that's what the 21st century is all about. We have been going mad. If you look at statistics as well, our rate of happiness, even though we've developed so much in the last 100 years, has been going down. Our technological development is going down, is going up, but our happiness is going down. Okay? People are just not happy. So we have a qualitative suffering, and this is actually a state now where religion will not help us. A lot of people go into religion to calm themselves down, okay? But you can't calm your ego down. It's just not going to happen. And people, we will see, seemingly religious people, seemingly people who are supposed to be good, will bring a lot of evil to the world. And in fact, a lot of wars, violence are still based on religion as it was in the past. If you just take a look at our history, you'll see that the purpose we fight for, things haven't changed much, except the suffering. It has increased. It will continue to increase until we do come to that balance and that development. So religion, unfortunately, will not help you to build a soul. Is it a detriment? Look, it's really your personal point of view if it's a detriment or not. I must admit, a lot of people who come to Kabbalah, who used to have some kind of a religious framework, tend to leave it alone, they don't leave religion, they just don't give that much importance to physical actions anymore. They really want to develop internally. So that's why we don't have a lot of religious students, because it does kind of keep you in that framework, especially if you've been raised really, really religiously. Sometimes it just blocks a person. But if you're open to things, it's also a person's nature as well. If you're open to things, if you can be a religious person, and you can be open to things as well, like science, like discovering laws of nature, and then it's not a detriment at all. It can actually add a lot to you. It can add a lot to your understanding of religion as well. Because let's face it, it's all been religious teachings have been based on trying to, push us up to the next level. So if you're open to things, it might not be a detriment at all. But if you're stuck in your framework, because religion is also something called blind faith. It's belief without discovery. In Kabbalah, we don't believe until we see. So you've got to have your own little balance there. I won't stick my nose into that. Also, you're from Brazil. There is going to be a congress in Brazil where there'll be a few lectures and so forth. So if you're in Brazil and if you want to pop by, you can go onto our internet site and you can see if you want to go, you can go and drop by, see what they're talking about, and meet the guys there. Anything else? We can take, I think, another one or two short questions before you give the announcements.
Okay, so a quick question. On the same topic, so Kabbalah used to be part of the study of the Torah in Judaism. So you're saying that it has nothing to do with Kabbalah, this religion?
Religion has nothing to do with Kabbalah, and like I said, it comes from Adam. I'm not sure how deep you guys went into the history of Kabbalah. Maybe not at all. But Kabbalistic teaching comes from Adam, and you'll know that there was no religion during Adam. All of the Rabbanut is after the destruction of the Second Temple. The 5 books of Moses is definitely not a history book. it's actually talking about a human's spiritual development. Although, people do take it as a history book, as a nation's story, but Kabbalists have actually been known for changing religions as well. So it has nothing to do with religion. Kabbalah is an absolute science about discovering reality, about discovering the power behind creation, and it has absolutely nothing to do with religion whatsoever. Anything else?
Jason from Canada. The answer is all I seek, all I want. I quit work so I could continue my research. I feel like I'm going mad. How do I speed up my spiritual development? I find myself no longer interested in anything in this world. Should I decrease my desire?
Jason, you're at a state where it's really actually good, because that desperation of finding the meaning of life is actually what we're talking about. You shouldn't let go of your corporeal life. So if you have a family, you must take care of them. Okay? You shouldn't just leave your work and leave the world and go onto a mountaintop, because that won't really increase your development. Being detached is not good, because then you will go mad. Okay? In order not to go crazy, okay, or to go mad, that's why we have friends around us. We're always studying Kabbalah as a group of friends, because it's a place where I want to do realistic analysis of myself, something very realistic. I don't want to go into La La Land. I don't want to go against things that are just going to break me up. You don't need to reduce your desire in Kabbalah. That's obviously not the case, because the Creator wants to actually give us everything. So if He wants to give us everything, I should do the opposite. I should want everything. But I need to want it in a correct way, that it doesn't cause suffering, or it doesn't give me just momentary pleasure. So I recommend for you to have an organized corporeal life. All of us here, we have families, we work, we have a regular corporeal life. But on that corporeal life, what we've chosen to do is to add spiritual development. And that is the study of Kabbalah. So we study the books together in order to develop our soul as well, but we don't detach from the corporeal life. We keep everything together. You'll find that reality is just one thing, and there's no need to really divide it up and cut it up and chop it up. So just keep everything together in one thing. You've got an organized corporeal life, keep that together, and on top of that, add the study, and don't go nuts, and stick with a good environment. Everything depends on building a nice, good environment, and that's what we strive to do every day and moment.
And by the way, also Kabbalists, they also kept this framework of that life. Bala Sulam had a day job, so did his son Rav Baruch Shalom. The Ari was a well-known merchant, very successful as well. It's not a contradiction.
So keep your daily work, daily framework, just like everybody else. We live in society like society accepts normal. Now, I do apologize, we've got about 1 minute left, so Gilad, please give the announcements.
Okay. So, as you know, we're back on regular schedule for classes. So the next lesson will be on Sunday, April 15th. The Sunday classes will take a direct look on how the Kabbalistic concepts affect you and the world around you, as we study today. And I think the next lesson is about the perception of reality.
Beauty.
The Sunday lessons are taught twice at 4 p.m. or 8 p.m. You can watch either or both. And the student question and answer forum. So any questions that were not answered here, and there were quite a few, because there were quite a few questions today.
All right. So
there were certainly questions that we didn't get to answer, but you can take them onto the question and answer forum, and you'll get answers there. Just a reminder, the chat window that you used in the lesson now it's only for the online lesson. Any offline questions, take into the question and answer forum. Any problems with the forum, you can contact ec@kabbalah.info. And even though the class has already started, we'll still keep the enrollment open for another 2 weeks. So if you have any friends or family you think may be interested, you're welcome to invite them by registering at edu.kabbalah.info, and they can watch the lessons they've missed. And I saw some questions about people who joined today. You can watch the lessons you've missed. You can download the lessons. They're all in the archive there. So I think
There
that's
we go.
all.
Now, also on the internet site, just a few seconds, there's a congress in New York coming up soon, and in Brazil, in South America. So if you're in South America, North America, and if you'd like to, take a sneak, take a peek, and drop by to see what these guys are doing and how they're studying and so forth, you're more than welcome to register and pop by. And that's all. I do hope I filled Asaf's shoes in, and hope you have a good lesson next time. Bye now.
Bye-bye.